Reading life. The old master Sagan could not read books, but he read life as one would decipher an ancient scroll under the light of the moon. Every morning, upon opening his eyes, Sagan observed the clouds, the flight of birds, the whisper of bamboo brushing against the temple walls. To him, everything was sacred text, written without ink, without paper. His disciples, young and hungry for knowledge, often brought him ancient texts, hoping for his interpretation. But Sagan would smile, gently close the book and say, "Before you read this, learn to read the wind. Learn to read your breath. Learn to read the face of the one who does not speak." One of them, Ren, felt frustrated. He had traveled for weeks to study the great sutras, only to find silence and fallen leaves as his only answers. "Master," he asked one afternoon, "how can I learn without reading words?" Sagan did not respond immediately. He took a cup of tea, offered it to Ren, and with a soft gaze said, "Because life is already written. You only need to learn to listen to its invisible ink." Ren lowered his eyes. Something stirred within him. It wasn't intellectual understanding. It was something deeper, something he couldn't yet put into words, but it had already begun to transform him. The next morning, Ren woke before the others. He stepped into the temple garden, where the mist still floated like a veil between the cypress trees. The air was filled with silence, but also with a subtle presence he couldn't name. He recalled the master's words, "Learn to read your breath." So he sat on a cold stone, closed his eyes, and simply breathed. At first, his mind jumped from one thought to another. He remembered the sutras, the texts he had read, the explanations he had memorized. But none of that knowledge seemed useful in that moment. The song of a robin pulled him out of his thoughts. He opened his eyes, and he saw it. Not the bird itself, but the perfect dance. Between the branch that bowed, the sunlight filtering through the leaves, and the stillness of the world around him. There was no past, no future, only that whole, indivisible instant. For the first time, he didn't want to understand it. He only wanted to be there. And then, without expecting it, he understood. Reading life was not about interpretation. It was about presence. There were no letters, but everything spoke. Each blade of grass told him something. Each stone held a story that didn't need to be voiced. Ren smiled. Perhaps, for the first time in a long while, he no longer wished to seek answers. He only wished to learn how to truly see. That afternoon, Ren approached Master Sagan, who was sweeping leaves along the path. He didn't say a word, he simply watched him. Every movement the master made seemed simple, yet full of intention. He wasn't sweeping just to clean. He was sweeping as if speaking with the earth, as if each leaf he touched carried a message that needed to be heard with reverence. "Master," Ren said softly, "today I read a page of life." Sagan paused. He looked up at him, not surprised, as if he had known all along. "And what did it say?" he asked. Ren thought. He couldn't put it into exact words. It wasn't a teaching he could quote, nor a lesson he could write down. So he replied simply, "It said there's nothing to understand, only to live." The master smiled. His eyes shimmered with the tenderness of one who sees a long-watered seed finally bloom. "Then you're already learning," he whispered, "because the greatest mistake of the seeker is to try to read life with the eyes of the intellect. Life is read with the heart, in silence." That night, while the crickets sang and the moon rose over the temple roof, Ren wrote in his journal, not with words, but with breaths, an inhalation, an exhalation, a pause, a moment. That was his reading, and for the first time, he felt he was reading something true. As the days passed, Ren stopped asking questions. He no longer worried about understanding ancient texts or memorizing the words of great masters. Now he walked through the gardens with a new kind of attention, as if everything around him were a sacred manuscript unfurled beneath his steps. One day, as he drew water from the well, he saw a leaf fall slowly and land on the surface. The ripple it created spread outward, soft, calm, inevitable. So too falls a thought, he whispered to himself, and so too does life touch our inner world. That night, during the tea ceremony, Sagan watched him in silence. Ren didn't speak, but in the way he held the cup, in the breath he took before sipping, in the way he bowed as he served, the master saw what could never be taught with words. Ren, Sagan said at last, "What are you reading today?" The young man closed his eyes for a moment, as if listening to a voice from far away. Then he replied, "Today, I read the sound of water as it boiled, the way the steam rose, clinging to nothing, and I understood that life also rises, dissolves, and continues on." The master nodded. There was nothing to correct, because once one learns to read life, they no longer need more teachers. Every moment becomes their guide. One foggy morning, Ren left the temple without a destination. He wanted to walk aimlessly, to let the path show him what he needed to see. The trees stood tall like silent columns. The sound of his footsteps on the damp earth was the only murmur accompanying him. He wasn't thinking about anything, and yet everything seemed to speak to him. He reached a clearing where an old man was planting seeds in a small garden. His curved back and wrinkled hands moved with patient precision, as if he were weaving something invisible. Ren stopped and watched in silence. The old man looked up, smiled at him without surprise, and said, "I don't know how to read or write, but the earth tells me everything. Tells me when it's tired, when it needs rain, when it wants to rest. You just have to stay quiet and listen." Ren bowed respectfully. He sat beside the garden and watched as the old man covered each seed with soil, without hurry, without distraction. And he understood that reading life wasn't a solitary act. It was also allowing others, in their simplicity, to read it with you. That day, Ren didn't read sutras, didn't meditate in the temple, didn't write in his journal. But when he returned, he felt more whole than ever. He had read a lesson no book could contain. True wisdom grows where there is silence and presence. The days passed like leaves carried by the wind. Ren no longer counted time or measured his progress. He simply lived. Each day was a new chapter, the song of a bird at dawn, the scent of rice slowly cooking, the way sunlight filtered through the bamboo roof slats. Everything made sense, even if he couldn't explain it in words. One afternoon, while sweeping the temple entrance, Ren saw a traveler stop in front of the gate. He was a young man, dressed in fine clothes, books under his arm, and a restless look on his face. "I seek wisdom," he said without hesitation. "I've heard of Master Sagan. Where can I find him?" Ren looked at him with tenderness. He saw himself in that young man, in the urgency, the desire to understand, the need for answers. He bowed gently and said, "The Master is in everything you see. He is in the dust you raise as you walk, in the silence you don't yet know how to hear, in the question you don't yet know how to let go." The young man frowned, confused. "I don't understand." Ren smiled. It was the same answer he had given long ago. And then he understood the cycle. He understood that reading life also meant sharing the page with others, even if they still didn't know how to read it. "It doesn't matter," Ren said. "When you stop seeking with your eyes, you'll begin to see with your heart." And he offered him a cup of tea, like a blank page where silence would be the first verse. The traveler accepted the cup, though he didn't fully understand. He sat beside Ren under the temple's eaves, and for a moment, neither spoke. Only the sound of the wind playing among the trees, the distant creak of a branch, the gentle steam rising from the tea. The young man, uneasy in the silence, finally said, "What if I never learned to read life like you do?" Ren didn't answer right away. He took his cup in both hands, lifted it to his face, and closed his eyes. Then, without opening them, he said, "It's not about learning. It's about unlearning. Unlearning the rush, the certainties, the names, the ideas. Life is already speaking to you. You've just been too busy to hear it." The traveler lowered his gaze. His heart felt touched by something subtle, something he didn't understand, but that made his breathing different. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was sacred space. And in that space, life spoke. Ren remembered something Sagan had once told him. When you read life without trying to understand it, you will know you have awakened. And now, sitting beside that young man, he understood the hidden meaning behind those words. Because reading life was not a personal achievement, but a shared gift. One day, someone would ask him how he had learned so much, without ever reading more than the air between things. And Ren would smile. Master Sagan left the temple on a foggy morning. No one knew where he had gone. He left no letters, no instructions, no farewells. Only the soft echo of his footsteps and the scent of his tea. Ren, now a silent guide himself, asked no questions. He knew the master hadn't really left. He was in every corner, in every gesture, in every pause. The younger disciples began to approach him with questions, but Ren offered no answers. He taught them to watch the rain, to listen to the sound of their own footsteps, to feel the breeze on their skin as if it were an ancient word. He handed them pages without ink, and little by little they too began to read life. One day, sitting by the lake, Ren wrote his only verse in his journal. Life is a book with no beginning or end. It opens in every moment. It is understood with closed eyes, and read with a silent soul. He closed the journal, buried it beneath a stone by the cherry tree. He no longer needed to write, because every time he breathed, every time he was silent, a new page opened,